life does what it always does. The career, once a source of pride, becomes hollow, its rewards unable to fill the quiet ache within. The children whose laughter once echoed through your home now live lives that barely intersect with yours. The relationship, which once felt like a refuge, disintegrates, leaving behind a stranger in the mirror. And in that sudden stillness, stripped of the roles that once gave you purpose, you're left with a haunting question that echoes louder than any applause or affection ever did. Who am I now? Most of us don't prepare for this moment because society celebrates people who pour everything into one pursuit. We admire the career-driven professional who sacrifices their 20s for success. We applaud the devoted parent who makes their children their entire world. And we romanticize the lover who loses themselves in their partner. But what happens when that phase of your life comes to an end? You realize that chasing a singular identity has left you with nothing to fall back on when it's gone. When your entire identity is built around one thing, life after that, success or failure, can feel like standing at the edge of a void. And that void, it's a terrifying place to be. Tying your entire sense of self to a single identity is a dangerous game. Even when it starts making you miserable, you tell yourself you have to keep going. Because if you stop now, what was it all for? But what we fail to realize is outdated goals can do more harm than good. You're no longer pursuing it because you love it. You're doing it because you're afraid to let go. And more than anything, you're afraid of losing the identity that's defined you for so long. As a spectator, we love to limit our vision to the glorified sides of these pursuits. But what we seldom talk about is the cost. Would you still desire the 23 Olympic gold medals that Michael Phelps won if you also had to incur the cost of losing your identity and struggling with depression after stepping away from the pool? Would you still wish the superstardom of Chester Bennington, who poured his anguish into lyrics that gave a voice to millions, yet it often drowned out his own, leaving him struggling to find a version of himself that wasn't defined by his pain? Would you still want the power and dexterity of Muhammad Ali in his prime, putting opponents to sleep one after the other, even if it meant you'd have to grapple with the deafening silence that followed when your body slowed down and the crowds stopped cheering? Each one of these stories echoes the same quiet truth. When your identity is tethered to one singular pursuit, its loss, whether by choice or circumstance, can leave you stranded in an unfamiliar landscape where the adulation fades and all that remains is the echo of who you used to be. The French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "Existence precedes essence." For Sartre, the idea meant that we aren't born with a fixed nature. We create who we are through our choices and actions. In other words, your identity is an ongoing project rather than a static, unchanging essence. Imagine your identity as a living canvas. You're not handed a finished portrait at birth. Sartre's idea tells us that you start with a blank canvas, and every decision, every stumble, and every triumph adds a brushstroke to your ever-evolving masterpiece. Every choice you make splashes new color onto your canvas. Sometimes you might wish you could erase a mistake, but even those strokes add depth and character to your identity. Sartre warned us about bad faith, that is, clinging to an outdated, fixed self-image like you're preserving an old, fading painting. Instead, he urged us to embrace the freedom to repaint and constantly redefine who we are. Your self-worth shouldn't come from one static image or a single achievement. It's the sum total of all your vibrant, imperfect brush strokes. It's that unpredictable, dynamic process that makes your artwork uniquely and beautifully yours. The parable of the Mexican fisherman is an old fable that'll change how you look at your own identity. An American banker meets a Mexican fisherman in a small coastal village in Mexico. "How long do you fish for every day?" the banker asks. "Just enough to take care of my family," says the fisherman. "But what do you do with the rest of your time?" "I sleep late, play with my kids, take siestas with my wife, and in the evenings, I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos." The banker is baffled. "Well, if you fish longer, you could make more money, build a business, move to New York, and in 15 years, be a millionaire." The fisherman asks, "And then what?" "Then you could retire to a small coastal village, sleep late, play with your kids, take siestas with your wife, and sip wine with your amigos." The banker spends his life chasing an identity he could already have been living. But in the distant future, he dreams of being the father he never was, the husband he could have been, the friend that his friends would reminisce about, the guitarist he never became. But by the time he reaches that distant future, it's too late. His children have grown up, resenting a father who was never there. His wife has left, seeking the warmth of someone who was more present. His friends have moved on, some even forgetting his name. And his fingers, once capable of making the fretboard sing, are too stiff to play the melodies of the life he could have lived. Meanwhile, the fisherman has enjoyed the compounded dividends of his diverse identities all along. When you diversify your identity, you create a safety net. When one part of your life crumbles, other identities can hold you steady. Like an investment portfolio, a diversified identity ensures that when one sector dips, others keep your life balanced. If you, the partner, is having a bad day after an argument with your significant other, you, the artist, might find solace in your craft. If you, the entrepreneur, faces rejection, you, the adventurer, might find peace in nature. And the best part? The lessons you learn from one identity often enrich the others. The discipline you develop as an athlete sharpens your focus as a business owner. The patience you learn as a parent makes you a more empathetic leader. The creativity you cultivate in your art helps you solve complex problems in your career. We're more than the sum of our parts. Our identities need to coexist in plurality for us to derive meaning out of our singular life. Chris Williamson from Modern Wisdom talks about a powerful frame for evaluating what you're optimizing your identity for: hidden versus observable metrics. Observable metrics are easy to measure: your salary, possessions, and status. Hidden metrics are harder to quantify: your quality of relationships, mental health, and sense of inner peace. It becomes easy to fall into the trap of adopting a singular identity when you trade observable metrics for hidden ones. You sacrifice relationships, sleep, and peace of mind to optimize for money, status, or validation. But the people who understand the value of hidden metrics are not confined by a singular identity. They live lives enriched by diverse identities and the pursuit of many fulfilling passions. They can be a sharp negotiator in the boardroom, a loving partner at home, a philosopher in solitude, a musician on quiet Sunday mornings, and an adventurer whenever the road calls. If you seek to optimize for observable metrics, you end up chasing singular outwardly pursuits that can signal your value to others, thereby quenching your thirst for external validation. But once you shift gears to internal validation and set out to cultivate a life rich in the pursuits that mean the most to you, you've successfully diversified your identity. The trick is to know the right balance of identities that works for you, because over-diversifying has its pitfalls as well, spreading yourself so thin that no part of you ever feels complete. But finding that balance, it's what makes life expansive rather than restrictive, resilient rather than fragile. Your identity isn't a fixed portrait, framed and hung for eternity. It's a living, breathing canvas, one that evolves with every season, every failure, every quiet 3 a.m. realization. Every choice you make, every role you embody, every lesson you carry forward is a brushstroke shaping the person you're becoming. And the most powerful part is that you hold the brush. Sartre once said, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." Such is the first principle of existentialism. Your existence is not bound by the past. You are not a prisoner of a single role, a single dream, a single definition. You are the sum of everything that you embrace, everything you let go of, and everything you seek to become. So ask yourself, at the end of your life, when the brush finally falls out of your hand, what kind of masterpiece will you have painted? Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video made you reflect on your own identity, consider liking it and sharing it with others who might need this message more than you. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more conversations like this, please consider subscribing. And if you're curious about how rigid ideologies shape our identities, watch this video next.